Chapter 11. Zoe sat in the moonlight that slid molten through her window. It lay pooled on the pillow where her head had been minutes before. The silver light had pierced her eyelids as if they were transparent, keeping her from sleep. They say people who sleep in moonlight become lunatics, she thought, and smiled. But it's too late, she added. I already am. She curled her legs up to hug them with her arms, feeling the window seat cover bunched beneath her, cotton daisies from a long ago spring. The lawn outside sparkled with frost, and the whole night was diamond and fairy. She thought of Simon. He held her so carefully, and his kisses had been so sweet that she wanted more. He laced her neck with shivers. She barely noticed it when his fangs pierced her throat, except then it felt like silver bubbles started to rise from her breast and burst within her head like champagne, and her body responded, surprising her into quickened breath. She blushed to think of how she had pulled him close. What was I saying to him? She wondered. It was like I was drunk. I should be disgusted, she thought. But no, it wasn't disgusting, now that she thought of it. But it was frightening. You could rush into your death unknowing, uninviting, enjoying the ecstasy of it, burned up in bright light like a moth. She hadn't wanted him to stop. Was it something Simon did on purpose, she wondered? Or was it part of the disease, a compensation for the victim like the numbing poison of a spider's bite? Yet Christopher liked to feel the victim's fear. My God, she thought, if Simon can't control the senses like that, what does Christopher do to them? The air of the room grew icy, and she pulled her robe closer around her. What Simon had done was hard to believe at first, but there was blood she had wiped from her throat, and the puncture wounds on her neck that had healed so fast. They had sealed in a matter of hours to leave just a bruise. She was still groggy and weak, but strangely stimulated. He had grown hotter and hotter as he drank from her warmth, and he had trembled. That trembling had aroused her as much as anything. She caused it, and he had stopped, hadn't he? She could trust him. Despite her doubts, it was his loneliness that convinced her of that finally. He just needs someone to talk to, she thought. That's all. Like me. A dark shape in the yard below caught her eye, and her heart thumped. But it was just a cat passing through. Was I afraid of, she thought, a small boy perhaps, creeping up on my house? But why was Simon afraid of Christopher? What could Christopher do to Simon that Simon couldn't do to him? Why was Simon giving up? Stop being a wimp, she wanted to shout at him as anger flashed through her. You can do something about your problem. She eased her clenched fist. God, it was so dumb getting mad at someone who wasn't even there. But then she'd been angry a lot lately. Uh-oh, she breathed softly. She'd forgotten to call Lorraine back. I'll have to do it tomorrow, she thought, then sighed. She'd be wiped out tomorrow if she didn't get some rest. She rubbed her eyes and tried to feel sleepy. I better go back to bed, she decided. She pulled the curtains against the disturbing light. A steady gray rain beat down on the taut skin of Zoe's umbrella as she splashed her way to the bus stop. Each puddle caused the damp to creep further up her legs of her corduroys, stiffening them against her calves. Cars hushed by, their drivers oblivious to the spray of water they sent splattering the sidewalk, their rear lights leaving streamers of red in the slick black street. Over the sidewalk, the street lamps misted the air with fractured light. Her mother mustn't have known it was raining this hard. She never would have called if she knew Zoe would have to rush outside on a night like this. But the phone call had come, the one Zoe longed for but seldom received nowadays. Come visit me, the husky voice had said. Your dad's working tonight. I'll be lonely. Zoe had flung on her mother's London fog raincoat, grabbed the red umbrella from the hall stand, and ran out into the night, barely taking time to check if she had bus fare in her pants pocket. Who cares about rain, she thought, grinning. She felt like a different person, miles from the girl who had been too tired to go to school today. Then a spatter of footsteps from behind echoed someone running. They drew closer, fast. She stopped before she could help it, more curious than fearful. She turned just as the runner reached her. Zoe, Simon said, pulling up short, and he held out his hand. A detached part of her wondered at his not being out of breath, while she took his hand automatically, as if she had been doing it for years. They continued walking, and she shifted the umbrella to cover him, too, but he didn't seem to notice. Where are you going? He flipped his sopping wet hair back from his eyes, scattering drops down her cheeks. The hospital. His eyes registered surprise. Concern, perhaps. You are ill? No, my mother's there. Oh. They stepped off the curb to cross the street. She saw him wince as he hopped across the stream in the gutter. You all right? Flowing water, he explained. It's a problem to me. What do you mean? Water rejects the dead. A corpse floats to the surface, no matter how long it takes. I can't believe I'm having this conversation, she thought. It's creepy. I am at odds with nature, he continued, and the whole nature world tries to remind me of this. The sun burns me, and when I cross running water, I can feel it trying to heave me off the face of the earth. It makes me sick to my stomach. No wonder he was sick on that voyage from England, she thought. If it's true. She squeezed his hand, and that made him smile. They reached the bus stop, and he took in the red and white transit sign. Can I come? He dropped her hand to search his pockets, but seemed to find nothing that satisfied him. I have enough for you two, she said. Let him come. It felt right. His hand stopped searching and relaxed into the side pockets of his jacket. You don't mind sharing the time with her? No. She was touched by his insight. It'll be good for her. She doesn't get out much nowadays. She likes unusual people. She'll have a wonderful time trying to figure you out. You love her very much. It wasn't a question. It's a difficult time for you. Understatement. Her lips twisted wryly. I haven't seen much of natural death. What is it your mother is dying of? Zoe bristled. How could he sound so cold? She has cancer. I wouldn't call it that natural. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound callous, but next to the death I've seen dealt, it seems much more natural. I mean, within the laws of nature, at least. The bus came. Zoe climbed the steps, folding her umbrella, and slammed enough change for both of them in the slot. He talked as if her mother were a specimen. She didn't bother to check if he followed her. She sat halfway down the almost empty bus, opposite the rear door, and laid the wet umbrella on the floor. When she sat up, she saw him grab the back of the seat in front and swing in gracefully beside her. He looked worried. I didn't mean to trivialize your mother's death. I know it matters. Every death matters. They were silent for a while as the bus lurched through the night. At first he finally said, You think no hope it might be a dream? That you'll wake up and it'll have been just a nightmare? Zoe turned sharply to look at him. Was he mocking her? But his gaze was far away, not even on her. You think she'll be here? He continued, pulling the curtains to let in the sun. Wishing you good morning? Yes, how did you know? His eyes snapped into focus, catching the light like broken glass. What kind of son would I be, not to know? She blushed stupidly and couldn't seem to find a natural position for her hands to settle in. He lost his mother, too. Yes, of course. You forgot, he said in a gentler voice. She nodded, embarrassed. But I felt that way, too, or like maybe it was a cruel joke, and everyone would confess it real soon. And then the anger, he said, as if it were inevitable. Anger at her for going away, for ruining our lives. She joined in. At God, he said. At everyone around for not understanding, for not having it happen to them. Simon nodded. At myself, too, for not having been old enough at the time to understand, or perhaps to save her. I thought sometimes I'm being punished, Zoe said, but I didn't know what for. I started looking for things to do to atone. A woman near the front of the bus turned to look at them, and Zoe realized the conversation had gotten louder. She lowered her voice. Now I think there's no payoff. No matter how good you are, no one's going to reward you. It's not like getting good grades in school. There's no logic, no prizes. He sighed. It pains me to hear you speak like that, so young and so bitter. She was surprised. But what about you? After all this time, after all you've been through? Yes, I suppose. But I've had much longer to become that way. And even then it isn't the point to do what's right for its own sake, even if there is no reward. He gave a short snort of laughter. But what am I talking about? What do I know of right and wrong? I have had to rationalize the wrong for so long, I'm not sure I could know the difference. It appears self-preservation is the strongest motivator of all, for everyone. Zoe noticed that they were passing the hospital. Damn.